What's up, Hanz family, and welcome to HANZOWEEN. HANZOWEEN is 31 tutorials in the month of October, so that means a new tutorial every day. Today's look is a Corvo-inspired mask. I'm gonna go more into tips and techniques I can give you since this is such a detailed look, so I hope that's cool with you. All product details will be listed down below, and let's get to the tutorial. We're going to start using these two ColourPop pencils. You can start with any color and a couple reference photos. I would suggest using a white pencil, but this is all I could find, and unfortunately I have to keep switching between them because I can't find a sharpener anywhere. Proportion is everything on this look. Make sure to take your time to make sure all the proportions are correct. You can see I use my pencil as kind of a ruler to kind of mark out some of the parts of the mask as well. Corvo looks like he has this kind of little burlap sack underneath his mask that he wears, so I'm taking a little bit of brown, white, and black from Mehron to just stipple that all over my burlap openings. Fill in the rest of the mask with a very mid-tone gray. I'm just mixing a little bit of black and white Mehron paint together to get this gray. I like to go in with the mid-tone and then highlight and shadow as I feel. But you could totally start with the lighter color or with the darker color and add highlights and shadows, but midtones is where I've found the best way to go. We're going to start using Mehron Makeup's White Paradise Paint by itself to start giving kind of the base of the highlights of the mask. The mask is very dimensional because the metal looks kind of warped, it isn't just nice and smooth, so there's a lot to it. That's why this video has to be so sped up, because I wanted you guys to get the entire process so that you could really see where I add these highlights. Since this really is just me going off of a reference picture, which is pretty self-explanatory, just copy what's on the picture, I wanted to teach you guys a few other little techniques and tips that would help out. If you're going off of a reference picture, a good rule to remember is a good artist looks at the reference picture 90% of the time and their skin or canvas 10%. That means that you are constantly looking at what you are copying to make sure it is exact. Take your time with those proportions, really look at those highlights, and try to understand why those highlights and shadows are there. For those little wire teeth, I as well looked at that reference picture, and it's really great to have a reference picture from the front and the sides so that you can see those wires from every angle. I wanted them to be as generally exact as I could get them. They weren't perfectly exact, so I couldn't find one side picture to one of them, but it's all good. I'm going in with black paint from Mehron mixed with a little bit of white just so that I get this very dark gray color, and I'm going to start adding in the base of these shadows. When I say base of the shadows and highlights, I mean that these are just kind of a little bit of a guideline for where they are in general, because we will definitely be going back and darkening these up, adding brighter highlights, but we do want to know what we're generally doing. When I am doing very realistic looks like this with metal, I personally like to have the paint kind of dry, meaning that I don't put a lot of water, and I use my finger to kind of pat the paint to blend into the paint that's underneath. This is because if the paint is really wet, like I usually use for my base, it will just really blend into the paint underneath. I want these shadows and highlights to sit on top of this base. Since it is warped metal, you can see that the colors are going from white all the way to black. They aren't transitioning softly, it's kind of a harsh transition. I'm going to darken up the edges with a little bit of black body paint from Mehron. This is completely black, and I am just blending it back into the other base of colors that I have with my finger. Still pretty much using the kind of dry brushing technique, but I did put a little bit more water into the paint so that I could really intensify the paint around the edges of my face to really show that that black is just going right into my hair. If something's really dark, like the sides of your face, since that mask would be curving over, then you could totally add a little more water just so that it was a little more saturated. But I think dry brushing would be your best bet to really be able to control and mimic the highlights and shadows the way you want. Using a small angled brush, I want to start adding in shadow into that burlap sack. Basically, that mask would be casting a shadow down on top of that burlap, so this is Mocha by Makeup Geek that I am just darkening up and creating a little bit more dimension. Make this kind of messy. It's a burlap sack. It doesn't have to be blended out beautifully, kind of make it look very rough. Make sure to as well get right underneath those kind of wire parts of the mouth that are holding the pieces of the mask together, because those wire portions would all cast the shadow onto the burlap sack as well. We've done this in every other tutorial. I need to add more to this shadow, so I'm using Corrupt from Makeup Geek, which is a black matte eyeshadow, and I am just going to add this closer to the mask, blending back into the brown. This will help to have the mask look like it's actually popping off our face even more than just the brown eyeshadow alone. We want the sides around our head to be as dark as possible because that is where it would be curving around. So just like a ball, there's a highlight on the center of the ball. As it curves around, it gets darker. So I'm taking black body paint and putting that even more up into my hairline. Then just darkening up a few spots with the remaining body paint that I do have left on my paintbrush. See, this tutorial is getting pretty crazy here, alright? Go back in with even more white body paint, and what I'm doing now is I'm looking for those really harsh white highlights. These are the highlights that really catch that little gleam of the metal. If you think of metal, it has that little boop, little white gleam on it. So that's what we're looking for. You don't want to highlight everything again with the white. You want to just focus on the little spots in your reference picture that have that really intense white highlight. Most of the highlights are not white if you look at metal. Most of them will be kind of a lighter white gray, but you want to stick to those bright white highlights, and same with the shadows. Not all of the shadows will be super dark, so I'm intensifying some of them, but I am keeping a lot of them kind of that mid-tone gray color. Painting your eyelids actually isn't too bad as long as you have a mirror that's kind of underneath you a little bit so that you can look down and kind of have it one eye closed and one eye open, as long as you're a pirate like I am apparently. We're just going to start on this eye that has a very kind of monocle feel to it. It's blue, so I'm just adding a little bit of blue body paint from Mehron. And then I am going to let that dry and use eyeshadow and a little bit of body paint to add the shadow and highlight to it. It almost looks like he has an eye underneath the monocle a little bit, so I am trying to create a little bit of a pupil and the highlights that look a little circular and round. The next eye is another way you could do this. I painted it all black, and then I went in with a lighter body paint to sketch in the remaining parts. Instead of trying to draw them in and then clean up with black, you could totally do it this way too. If you are body painting on your eyelids, just make sure it dries between every step. This body paint does dry matte and it stays pretty well, but you could set it if you're a little worried about it, especially if you do have a little bit of hooded lids and they do tend to crease very easily. Fix around your eyes a little bit with a really bright pop of white highlight. And then I want to grunge up the mask even more, using a little bit of that black Corrupt eyeshadow and drawing on some little texture marks here and there. This is the point in my painting when I am just really fine-tuning everything. I'm looking at it, I'm going between highlights and shadows pretty quickly, as you can see, and I just want to make sure everything really pops off the skin according to my reference picture. Also, even though your reference picture is good and awesome to have, don't take it too literal because you still are making this work on your face. As long as it works on your face, then it's going to look great. Don't try to go so literal in your reference picture that you lose that you're an actual human being and you're painting on your body. Add in your final highlights so that they're super, super white, and you will be done. Thank you guys for watching. I know this wasn't a very typical video. I mean, I explained my steps, but I did try to give you more tips and techniques, so I hope that was cool. If you do decide to recreate this look, please use the hashtag HANZOWEEN so I can see. And please subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow.